The Italian Radio Hour is sponsored by Istituto Mondo Italiano.
Buonasera a tutti. Good evening and welcome to the Italian Radio Hour. Io sono Stefano.
E io sono Viviana. Stefano, come stai stasera?
Sto bene. E tu come stai?
Benissimo. Looking forward to date night with my husband tonight. We are in between semesters, so tonight is the week off, the night off, so...
You know, our class did not get a break. I'm visibly upset because we do the Saturday morning class.
I know, but you guys are so on the roll, and I just didn't want to interrupt that learning curve.
Well, please, next time, interrupt the learning curve. I want a Saturday back. All right, folks, listen, again, we want to welcome you to another episode tonight, and as always, we want to welcome back our regular listeners and welcome any new listeners, and obviously anyone listening online at khbradio.com. As always, be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook at the Italian Radio Hour.
E benvenuti ai nostri ascoltatori da tutto il mondo. Grazie per essere con noi anche questa sera. Scusate, mentre continuiamo il nostro viaggio per l'Italia e la cultura italiana.
All right. And remember, always live radio, you're going to cough. But again, let's like talk about our last episode very quickly because, we had Roberto from the Italian consulate. And for our listeners that, kind of heard him speak last week, he gave some good advice, some good pointers if you're interested in becoming a dual citizen. Some mistakes to not make. It's a lengthy process, but, if you
definitely
are
worthwhile. There are a lot of benefits in doing that.
Absolutely. And that's also a friendly reminder that if you are listening tonight and you missed last week's episode, to go out to Mondo Italiano and, go check out the previous episodes, including last week's where we had Roberto on, but we also had Nikki. Nikki talked about how to buy real estate in Italy and kind of some of the traps and the things to avoid. Again, it's not... Buying real estate anywhere is a challenge. So, if you're not from Italy going there and trying to I'll buy a house, and somebody on the corner says, I've got a house for you, my friend. You got to be careful. So she gave us some good pointers.
Yes, and then I wanted to thank everyone that has come to the concert alla Boara. It was a full house. The concert was magical, was powerful, very enjoyable. So all the guests had the ability to speak to all the members after the concert. And because it coincided with Father's Day, I had a little surprise. I had made Zeppoli San Giuseppe for everyone. So it was indeed something a little unexpected, but you cannot have an event without having some food, okay?
All right, but now, folks, we know what everyone's tuning in for. So let's talk about the phrase. Last week it was avere grilli per la testa. Cosa significa?
Okay, so this cute saying, avere grilli per la testa, actually refers to people that have very extravagant and creative ideas. Because as you know, crickets are excellent jumpers. And in parallel to the way that people think, these jumps and high hoops are signifying of someone that maybe doesn't think in a rational and consequential way, kind of jumps up and there. But actually there is also some science behind this expression. Obviously, the expression was born before the science, but it looks like a team of Californian researchers led by Fred Gage have actually documented the existence in the brain of jumping genes. So it's a sequence of DNA, and they jump from one place to another of the genome and altering and making mutations. So it's interesting, right?
Very interesting. That means the two little monkeys that are running around in my brain, they don't have to worry about
I don't see any crickets. You're good.
All right. Again, folks who emailed in, they're taking a chance at the answer. We appreciate your emails. We do enjoy reading them, so please keep the emails coming.
Okay, so we're almost ready to introduce our first guest, but as you know, a little pubblicità. Parli italiano? Do you want to learn, improve, or master your Italian? Istituto Mondo Italiano can help. Located in the heart of Regent Square, Mondo Italiano offers small group classes and one-on-one private tutoring to help you learn Italian in no time. Visit us online at www.istitutomondoitaliano.org, and remember, our spring semester starts next Monday. Go ahead and register. So here we are with a very, very special guest that I have had the pleasure to listen to many times. So I almost feel like I know her. Her name is Francine Segan. She is one of America's foremost experts on Italian cuisine. She is an engaging public speaker, as you will realize tonight. She's an author of multiple books, which they are stacked right here with me, and we'll talk about it. And she's also a TV personality. She writes proliferously on food and food traditions, and she knows pretty much everything about everything. So, Francine, are you with us? Hello, Francine? Okay, so this is the beauty of live.
Radio. We know Francine is there. We'll get Francine on here in just 1 second.
Yes, okay. So anyway, the introduction that, the topic that Francine will talk to us is indeed we're going to find out all about her food and her experience in Italy and how her path, her career started in the food business. So, Francine, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. A sigh of relief from all of us here at the station. Welcome. Buonasera.
Grazie.
So, obviously, the curiosity or the starting point of tonight's conversation is how did this passion towards food start in your life?
I spent time in Italy with my children. One summer with my husband, we decided to rent a house for the month of July. And I fell in love with the lifestyle, with the food that I could get in the farmer's market, with how open everyone was, restaurants and rosticcerie. And I just realized that there is such a depth. When you spend a month in Italy, you realize how many amazing recipes, how many special food products there are there.
And but before diving into the Italian food, you had a proliferous career also as a book author of other volumes and other types of recipes. For instance, the Opera Lover's Cookbook and the movies menus. And can you tell us also about those other publications that are so beautiful?
My very first book is called Shakespeare's Kitchen, about the food of Shakespeare's time, the Elizabethan and the Renaissance. And that was really my first foot into food. I was a child psychologist. I wasn't in food at all. And having my own children and being a psychologist, I love to make food and dinner fun. And one day my son came home, and he said in school they were teaching him Shakespeare. And he said, it's not so interesting. Can you make it fun with food? And I said, how? And he said, well, maybe what did Shakespeare eat for dinner? Maybe we could do a dinner. And I thought, what a great idea. And I started to look up what Shakespeare ate. And that became a dinner I made for my children. And then he talked about it at school. The teacher let him do that, make a dinner for the whole class as a project instead of doing a paper. And then my own friends, my grown-up friends, said, we want one of those dinners. And slowly, after I did one of these dinner parties in the style of Shakespeare with candles and all the funny dishes that they had, things like a pie that's shaped like what's inside the food, so like a fish shape, and then I put little funny stories for the guests to read, like the fact that the rhyme 4 and 20 blackbirds is true. They used to put live birds into the pie. They thought it was very funny when you cut into the pie at the table that the birds would escape and fly through the room. And it's amazing. You'd read the recipe of how to do it, and the last line would be, If you're having trouble with the birds, don't worry. You can also make this recipe with garden snakes or frogs.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh lovely.
I like when they give you alternative ingredients, yes?
Allowed substitutions.
Francine, I want to go back because you said something very interesting. Because if folks got to know you now, they would see this, this author, this speaker, this kind of, food historian, expert on Italian cuisine. But you said you were a child psychologist. I would love to go back. Can you tell me a little bit more about your background? I kind of see where you're starting to get started, but tell me a little bit more before that. Like, obviously, what kind of leads up to this? What defined you?
So I loved play and I loved toys, and so I knew I wanted to go into psychology. And then taking classes, I realized that what I really loved was children and how do we maximize their educational potential? How do we keep children happy? So I was very interested in toys, play, learning, and I invented some toys. In fact, one of the earliest things I did was I worked for a company that doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Dakin, and it was a big California company that made plush animals and also then started a line for infants. And I'm the person who changed the idea of the mobile that's on the crib, the little fun thing that plays the music and spins so the baby can have something to look at. Mm-hmm. I changed it so that it faces the baby. It used to be kind of a room decoration, and the baby was looking up at kind of nothing. And then I made them tilt it so that most of it is what the baby sees, so that makes the baby want to be more engaged and want to reach up, so it's good for their back. Anyway, so that was where I came from, and wasn't so much of a cook. Not so much. And then, but I did love to at dinner time make fun things for the children. We'd always have some kind of a theme. If my daughter in their school, when they started learning French, for example, we did a night where about a week we had 5 or 6 French cheeses every night. And so it was a natural thing that when my poor son in 5th grade, what are they, 9 years old, started to learn Shakespeare. And he was hoping I could somehow make one of these dinners that could make it fun. And he ended up starting my career, my second career.
So so then kind of fast forwarding, when you went to Italy, did that have anything to do with cooking, or was that just a vacation and you just kind of took off from there?
It was a vacation. In fact, I had written, at that point, I had written a book called Shakespeare's Kitchen, and then I was really more interested in the food of the past, not so much the food of what is happening today. So I had written a book on the food of ancient Greece and Rome. I wrote a book about food in movies from various time periods, food in opera. And so I wasn't at all thinking about contemporary Italy. But then, having been there for a month, I came home to my editor, who had published the Opera Lover's Cookbook, which was nominated for a James Beard Award and other awards. And I asked my editor, I think we should talk about maybe me doing something in contemporary Italian. And she said, no, there's 350 cookbooks on Italy published every year. There's nothing new to say about Italy. Stick to the past. So I said, okay, but then it was bothering me. So I invited her to a dinner party. And I said to her, if I can show you in this dinner 5 things you've never tasted, will you consider looking at a proposal about a book on the food of Italy? And she said, okay. By the end of the appetizers, I did the aperitivi. Then when we had the primo, by the end of the primo, she put her thumb up, and she said, "Yes, let's go."
Okay, so it's actually, so showing that there is so much still that needs to be told, not only about the traditions and the past, which we'll dive in and switch, but also about the modern, because food, like culture and language, keeps on evolving. So there is some of the dishes that might have a past, but some others are the creations of the modern chefs, which it kind of leads us very nicely, as I said before, before, I have your books right in front of me, and they're all very beautiful, and I cherish them very much. And I do have Pasta Modern that I'm just going to randomly open at page 138. So here is a beautiful picture of fettuccine, or actually tagliatelle, with sea urchins and coffee. A combination that I've never heard before. My parents are from Puglia, so the sea urchin is something that you would eat fresh. I ricci di mare. You just have a little knife, you open it up, and you scoop up the pulp.
When you say fresh, you mean like
fresh, just from the sea. You can actually dive in and pick your own. You just have to be very careful because they have little needles. Is this a recipe that you had experienced during your travels to Italy, that you come up with it or you researched it? This was just one that I opened up randomly.
So yes, the book Pasta Modern for me was very much wanting to take, because it's called New and Inspired. So it's the new recipes, what the chefs are doing today, and some from the past that maybe we didn't know here. And not one recipe that I ever do is my own. I am not interested in what Francine Segan is doing. I'm interested in what Italy is doing. And so I am only interested in spreading the word of what Italian chefs and bloggers and nonne are making in Italy. And so that was a recipe from a chef. And it was very sensible to me because I've visited Sicily many, many times. And one of the things I love to do is walk along very early in the morning when the fishermen come in and they sit down on a basket and they start to open the sea urchins with all their beautiful spikes. It's beautiful black inside with this wonderful orange meat, and they serve it with a lemon and a little piece of bread that you could use to scoop it up. Mm-hmm. And it's the morning, and they're often sitting there for themselves, sipping an espresso that they get in a little plastic cup from a shop nearby. And so that flavor of coffee and the sea urchins is not so foreign to them, that combination. But this was a combination, the idea of cooking with coffee, especially even cooking pasta with coffee, is something that several Michelin star chefs have been doing. And so it's very, very interesting. Alaimo, Massimo Alaimo from Veneto does it, and others. So very, very interesting, this idea of using coffee and even chocolate. Chocolate is another ingredient that seems strange in a savory dish, but is very sensible once you think about chocolate is not sweet until you add sugar.
Indeed, because the cocoa, you can have cocoa tagliatelle. I actually do that often with some saffron and nice big shrimp and so forth. Or you talk about some of the other dishes that include chocolate per se, like the eggplants and so forth, which is a specialty. You wouldn't associate eggplants and chocolate, but it's something from the Amalfi Coast. You're right. Even here, coffee, for those of you that don't have the book yet, the coffee that we're talking about is not the liquid, but just the coffee grounds kind of brushed on top, sprinkled on top. So indeed, there are these unique combinations that are very creative, but they marry each other so well in the flavors.
You know, I'll say, Francine, I just want to kind of piggyback off that, because, you know, when you look at the books, and it just seems like there's such a diversity of the flavors. I mean, and we're calling this is Italian cuisine. You know, most people listen, they're going to think, oh, Italian pizza, pasta, spaghetti, meatball, you know, the usual stuff. But it's just so diverse. If someone came to Francine and said, hey, Francine, what is Italian food to you? How could you even answer that?
For me, Italian food is very linked to the terroir, to Italy. And so it's not so much a particular restaurant. It's really the land. What food and foods and ways of combining them are done in Italy. And I think the biggest hallmark and why I love it so much is it is so related to where you are. That moment, being present in this second, is so wonderful of an experience to have in Italy. So you are eating a particular vegetable, a particular egg that is from Italy. And the Italians, because these essential ingredients are so wonderful, they don't have to do a lot of jumping up and down and a lot of magic with them. I think the hallmark of Italian cuisine is a few exceptional ingredients treated very delicately.
So you have traveled throughout Italy, and I think in January you were on the Amalfi Coast, you mentioned Sicily and many other trips. I'm actually curious, you have been a judge on several food competitions. One, I think it was a pesto competition, and I don't remember others. Can you tell us about one of those experiences for any of us that have never had the privilege to be a judge on a food competition?
Being a food judge is such an honor. I was a judge, for example, for the Barilla International Pasta Competition. They had hundreds of chefs from around the world giving recipes, and then they had the finals, and I was so honored to be one of the judges, the only non-Michelin star judge. All the other 5 judges were Michelin star, and so that was great fun. But the pesto one, which was fascinating, because as you know, pesto is just 7 ingredients. It's a fabulous, famous Liguria recipe, pesto genovese. And I was standing there with the other judges saying, this competition is very strict. They're giving everyone exactly the same basilico, the same basil, the same pine nuts, the same oil, the same garlic, the same cheese. How are we going to taste the difference? And so I was shocked that from the very beginning, the first 2 people, both pesto was wonderful, completely different. As we went down to I think there were 15 finalists, it was amazing that each tasted so different, yet using the same ingredients. And so it shows that the diversity that can happen, and the fact of, the hand of the chef, how much to grind it. And the only thing that was original is they could bring their own mortar and pestle. Mm-hmm. And so, but otherwise, it was just what was their particular proportion, their particular strength and rhythm and mixing and timing of it, that they were all wonderful, but yet they all absolutely tasted different enough that we as judges really could pick a winner.
So, I'm going to leave you with just one little question while we go into another commercial break. So, again, based on your experience, is there a region that you would recognize yourself the most, or you would like to share more information about today with our listeners? I'll leave you that. Give us a minute, and we'll come back to hear your answer. Applying for dual citizenship? Need documents translated? Istituto Mondo Italiano provides certified translation and interpretation services in 20 different languages. Be sure to visit us at www.istitutomondoitaliano.org.
Don't delay in getting that plumbing repair done. Call Palucci Plumbing today for all of your plumbing needs. From trenchless sewer repair and waterline repairs and replacement, hot water tanks, sewer camera inspections to Pittsburgh potty repairs. No job is too small for Palucci Plumbing. Owners Amy and Nick Palucci have been in business for over 20 years, so give them a call for your next plumbing repair replacement. That's Palucci Plumbing, 412-782-5050. That's 412-782-5050.
Welcome back to the show. And once again, our guest tonight is Francine Siegen, one of America's foremost experts on Italian cuisine. We just went on a little commercial break with a question to Francine. Is there a region that you recognize yourself the most, or would like to share some information about with our audience tonight?
There are 20 fabulous regions, and they're all wonderful. But one that I've spent a lot of time in the past few years is Emilia-Romagna.
Yes, and Emilia-Romagna. So we have two names. And if you ask an Emiliano, they're Emiliano. If you ask a Romagnolo, they're considered Romagnolo. So for those of you who might not have an atlas in front of us, geographically, Emilia-Romagna has different provinces, and they usually put this divider, although it's not a physical divider. So the Emiliani are usually the ones that come from the province of Piacenza, Parma, Reggio, Parma, Reggio, Modena, Ferrara, and I would say 3/4 of Bologna. Then you have the Romagnoli that take the remaining territory, so wherever is left of Bologna. Then we have Ravenna, Rimini, and Forlì. So tell us about Emilia-Romagna, some of your favorite spots, foods, experiences. Lead us on this beautiful journey through Emilia-Romagna tonight.
I actually give 3 or 4 different talks of an hour each on Emilia-Romagna because there's so much there. I give a talk on Motor Valley Festival and Motor Valley, that section of Emilia-Romagna where it's called Motor Valley because there are so many sports cars that are made there. Lamborghini, Ferrari, Maserati, and that area is kind of, I call it, they call it fast food, fast cars, slow food is a fun area. But then there's the whole Dante and the Ravenna, which is wonderful UNESCO World Heritage sites because of the 5th and 6th century mosaics. Mm-hmm. And then I've got another area, also Romagna, that's Rimini, because that's where Fellini was born. I wrote the book Movie Menu, so I have to love Fellini, and that's another city that I just think is so wonderful to visit. And Romagna, we kind of know the food more, I think, of Emilia, part of Emilia-Romagna, the aceto balsamico, parmigiano reggiano. But down in Romagna, they have a lot of specialties that are really wonderful. Some cheeses. They've got a fascinating pasta called passatelli.
Mm-hmm. Yes, let's describe this pasta, but the tool that is used to make it, it's very unique. And I think you and I have the passion for going to antique stores, trying to find all the pasta tools, right? I have a couple different versions, ones that I used to make passatelli, and the other one is so rusty that it's just hanging on the wall. Can you explain a little bit what passatelli look like, maybe how they're made?
So what's interesting about passatelli is that it isn't made just with flour and water or flour and egg like regular pasta. It's made with leftover bread. So the breadcrumbs, it could be breadcrumbs from bread. Massimo Bottura, a very famous chef from Emilia-Romagna, even uses pizza crust, leftover pizza crust. And so you make these breadcrumbs and you mix it with, can be lemon zest or nutmeg, and then they mix it with egg and you make a dough and you press it. The reason it's called passatelli, it passes through what looks like in America kind of a potato ricer. But in Italy, the old ones are a big round disc with holes and then 2 handles on each side, and you press down so that the dough pops through these holes. And then they're put right into boiling broth. And it's usually, traditionally in the past, it was served in a broth. These wonderful, sort of rustic, easy to make because you're just pressing the dough and then serving it in this wonderful warm broth in the wintertime, topped with parmigiano reggiano. And now it's very popular in the past 15 or 20 years to have passatelli asciutti, so passatelli that are made a little bit drier so that they're served with sauces. In summertime, I was just there in August, and I had them with clam sauce.
Oh, interesting. You will have to give me the name of the restaurant where you tried. I've never tried that, but it sounds delicious.
Like I said,
yes,
I've never heard of that. And that
I will
sounds
show
very
you the tool.
interesting.
Next time you come to school, I will show you the tools. Okay, now we were on the food conversation, so let's move on with some other big. Emilia Romagna is the cradle of food. I mean, it has also the nickname of La Grassa, the fat, because again, a lot of different, in addition to La Dotta. So what are some other specialties that people can enjoy in this region, or you personally enjoy?
So you're mentioning La Grassa. Bologna has 3 nicknames: La Grassa for the fat one, La Rossa, La Dotta,
yes.
the smart one. So because Bologna was the center, one of the oldest universities, and Bologna, of course, is famous for mortadella. It's which is a cooked salami that dates back to the Middle Ages, and it's wonderful ground pork with spices, and it's gently cooked, and that's one of the very traditional. And I think in America we call it bologna because it comes from Bologna, but there's nothing like
There is no comparison. One time I was making tortellini and I ran out of mortadella because I have to go to the specialty store to get it. And I've never bought Bologna, wherever you say, No, I got it and I put it in the mix and I said, I will never do it again.
No. Phony bologna is for a reason we say this, phony bologna. No, nothing like mortadella. You have to go to Bologna because you're going to see, you mentioned tortellini. Tortellini also, Bologna and Modena are known for their tortellini, the little wonderful, they look like little hats, but the legend is that supposedly they were designed after Venus's belly button, the little tortellini, because the innkeeper peeked in the room and he saw her belly button and he was so inspired he made tortellini. And then I love when I'm in Italy, the chefs and the grandmothers, they show me you have to make them so that they're small enough that you can put 7 on a tablespoon.
Indeed.
And they do it, of course, when they cook it, they puff up more, but it's amazing.
Yes,
amazing.
You have to have a certain dexterity. Last year, we were lucky enough to work with one of the most famous sfogline in this region, Rina Poletti, and we actually had 3 different pasta classes. She connected from Italy, and first of all, we brought in all the long rolling pins directly from the region, and it was very funny because when I tried to when I was flying out, I had maybe 12 of them. So I didn't know, they were too long for the suitcase. So I had them wrapped, those services that I wrapped the suitcases. And then I went to check in. They asked me, if I had any carry-on, and I showed them the rolling pins. Unfortunately, I was not able to bring them on board because they could have been used otherwise. I was so heartbroken because there is, all these merchandise, these goods that just get tossed. And, after visiting the manufacturer, I actually had them engraved, the initials of the schools.
Oh, no.
But anyway, it just gave me the excuse to contact the manufacturer again and say, please ship them to me and we'll have the class.
Did you have to leave them?
I had to leave them, yes. The same thing happened with the pezzelle iron from Abruzzo, yes.
Oh, no.
So with Rina Poletti, she talked about, the culture of La Sfoglia. And so we did the tortellini. And again, I don't know the speed. It's like a fraction of a second, and she has it wrapped around her finger. But then also she showed us tagliatelle. And tagliatelle has also another little cute story that I'm sure you would like to share, the tagliatelle and the fettuccine. Because
tagliatelle, as you know, there are certain. They're kind of for the listeners who may not know them. They kind of look like a noodle of a certain width and a certain length, and it's such a special dimension that there's even a. No, I thought that even a special gold bar that is left in Bologna in the Chamber of Commerce to say what the dimensions are. But the legend is that in the 1400s, when Lucretia Borgia was coming to visit Bologna, the Duke of Bologna wanted his chef to make something very special for her. And so the chef was thinking, and her beautiful blonde hair was very famous. And so he made the dough with a little bit extra egg yolk so it would be extra golden color. And he wanted to make them extra long and extra wonderful so that they would look like her long golden hair. And so that's the story of tagliatelle. Mm-hmm. And of course, from the Italian, tagliatelle are so much fun to make. It comes from tagliare, to cut, because you make the big sfoglia, you fold it over, and then you cut it, and then out comes these beautiful noodles.
Yes, and the tradition of pasta is so ancient. Actually, there have been depictions in caves dating back to the Etruscans. The archaeologists were able to identify pasta tools. Obviously, they were not the KitchenAid or the pasta machine, which in Italian is called nonna papera, and or mattarelli. So from the cultivation of grain, there's always been pasta, but then it's thanks to the Romans that we started to see a long stretched type of noodles, the lagana, which is now still in existence and is served with ceci in certain regions, that we started to see the noodles being stretched, served completely different. So sorry I went off topic, but when we talk about pasta, I just
actually that's a funny point though, because everyone just thought that was Marco Polo that brought it back. See,
Francine, let's say it together.
Yeah.
No.
That's crazy. It's folia. Because we have documents from the 10th century in Sicily and in southern Italy of factories of commercially sold pasta that's 300-400 years before Marco Polo ever went there. Who put this story in circulation? I know he wrote about seeing them make pasta, but that didn't mean, you're just looking, I always tell people when I give a talk, I love Chinese food. Look at how many shapes their noodles are. How many shapes? 1, 2. How many shapes do we have in Italy of pasta? 3, 5, 700 shapes?
That's a good point. Very good point.
Francine, refresh my memory. Wasn't there also like a commercial back in the day? It was like, whether it was BBC or some other channel that showed people picking pasta from a tree, and people believed it from the longest time. What TV, do you remember what channel that was?
Yes, on April 1st. It's coming up, the anniversary. On April 1st in the 1960s, the BBC did a program, April 1st, Fool's Day. They said that in Switzerland, they have it's the special harvest of the spaghetti, and they have spaghetti trees, and they had pictures of women taking spaghetti off trees. And so this BBC, very short little program, they had hundreds and hundreds of people, British people, writing to the station, where do I get the seeds to have a spaghetti tree? Where can I want to grow one in my backyard. Where do you get the seeds?
So,
well, don't leave it out of suspense. Where do you get the seeds?
Now we know why so many people make fun of British food.
So talking about real food, you had mentioned a name that everyone that is listening probably is familiar with, Massimo Bottura. Have you been to the Osteria Francescana yourself? Have you ever met Massimo?
I've been very, very lucky that I have done several events with Massimo Bottura. I interviewed him for a UN event to talk about an international event with people from China, India, hundreds of people on sustainability. I've done some things with him in New York City. I've done some things. I was lucky enough to have his wonderful cuisine at a gala at the Motor Valley Festival a few years ago, so I got to taste his food at the gala. I've been to the outside of his restaurant, and I went to the less expensive restaurant that he has in Modena. That's a more, but he is such a genius. At the gala, he had this one dish which is very, very famous. It's a dish of it's a veal dish that looks like spin art from the fairs in America, where the little disc spins and you put squeeze art and it flashes all around. So he served this delicious little tiny piece of meat with these wonderful, beautiful, colorful sauces just splashed onto the plate. You almost hated to eat it because it was a work of art. And then after, he took us to the kitchen to show us the tablecloths where he had been preparing it, which looked like just a splattered, wonderful Jackson Pollock creation.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there is also something else that that he has had it for many years, which is Missione Tortellante. I don't know if our listeners are familiar with it, but he has created this school with for young fellows with different abilities, are learning life skills and additionally also learn how to make tortellini. And they have become so proficient that they are actually selling it. Out of this initiative last year, we did also a little fundraising ourselves because a publication has come out where the sale of this little, it was 8 recipes from local chefs about il brodo di Natale, which is usually served at Christmas time. Again, any proceeds from the sale of this little publication went to Missione Tortellante. We talked about
he was.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. He was rated as one of the 100 most influential people by Time magazine a few years ago because of initiatives like that, and like the very innovative soup kitchens, the feeding the poor, and ways of utilizing and motivating chefs around the world to work with food waste, to reduce food waste, like using the pizza crust for making passatelli. And he did a wonderful thing one year when there was a terrible disaster in Emilia-Romagna, and so many of the Parmigiano Reggiano wheels of cheese broke and had to be used. And so he did a big initiative to spark chefs and do creative things of how to use the wonderful Parmigiano Reggiano, the wonderful cheese.
Well, you just mentioned another icon of this region, Parmigiano. There are many different opportunities to go and visit different caseifici, so the producers. I had the experience last year to do so. Is there a specific caseificio, or have you seen the production of the Parmigiano?
Yes, and in fact, I hope it's back in now that COVID, we're relaxing the rules. But it used to be if you contact the consortium of Parmigiano Reggiano, they would help you to arrange a free tour. Early in the morning, you'd go to Caseificio and watch how the milk from the morning is mixed with the milk from the evening, and how right before your eyes, with a little bit of heat and just a little bit of rennet, just a natural substance, it starts to turn into this wonderful, gigantic bowl of the beginning of Parmigiano. So I would look at the website of Parmigiano Reggiano Consortium. Very lots of information and ways to actually visit and experience it.
I'll tell you a little bit about my my experience. I drive around throughout the region. I usually have very tight schedules because I'm one of those that wants to see it all. And so I indeed made a reservation to go and take a tour with my husband. And then the name of the caseificio was Hombre. So, okay, I make the reservation. It was the only one that was available on that day. And then I'm like going back and said, I picked the only one that doesn't have an Italian name, and maybe someone that is, I don't know, I was kind of debating whether it was going to be authentic or not. Well, it was a great, great surprise because we pulled in, and obviously all those friendly cows were there having their little lunch, so to speak. But the hombre caseificio belongs to the family Panini. And again, for any Italians that grew up in Italy and has collected players' cards and all these albums, you used to go to the to the newsstand and get a little packet, and then you had these albums where you would put the ones you had and then trade in the extras. So Mr. Panini actually moved eventually to, I think it's one of the 2 or 3 brothers, two stayed in Italy and continued the family business, and then he went, the trading cards, he went to either Argentina or Venezuela, and he didn't speak Spanish initially, and they nicknamed him Hombre. So when he came back to honor this wonderful experience he actually had in Latin America, and decided to call his caseificio Hombre. And the nice thing is that when you go and visit the factories, they teach you how to read all that, so to speak, gibberish that is on the outer, the date, where it's coming from, when it was produced. And it's very meticulous. The type of information is actually printed outside a Parmigiano wheel. And then the big surprise. Our guide led us to a different part of the building. There was the most beautiful collection of vintage cars. This Maserati was just there greeting us, surrounded by probably another 50 cars of immense value. And this was a little bit of my own, no test drives. This you have to go, before you mentioned the Motor Valley. So Francine, tell us a little bit about the Motor Valley, and I believe you have an upcoming talk about this topic.
Yes, I went a few years ago, and I think I'm going back this year because it was so much fun to experience the craftsmanship of Italy. I know the food, I love the food, but now I got to really see how the combination of the machinery and then the beautiful interiors, the custom-made interiors, the meticulous design, and then the fabulous story of, the combination of Lamborghini and Ferrari and their little battle with each other. It was just wonderful. And so visiting these museums for each of these big names or watching them make the cars is so fascinating. And there's a fantastic Motor Valley Festival has a great website, even with some virtual visits, so you can link on and watch what the museum looks like to give you a little peek. And they've got collections. Then they've also got, as you mentioned, there are people that are private collectors, and they're about, I think, 18 or 19 private collections of things like Vespa collection or old sports cars that are privately held but that are open and free to the public. And you can find that all on Motor Valley. But I loved going through it. I loved learning more about Ferrari and his story, and Lamborghini, and how he had started out. His family were really farmers, and so when he was and winemakers, and when he was in the war, he came back with an idea to utilize some of the machinery that was left over for the war and make better and better and better equipment for the tractors and things. And then he got wealthy, and he started to buy some sports cars, and the sports car he could buy then was Ferrari. And it wasn't quite, he knew machines, and he thought he could maybe give some advice, which wasn't so well received. But anyway, it's wonderful fun to go through Motor Valley and to see the museums and see the production rooms. And then there's racetracks. There's many, many races throughout the year that you can see in that area.
I'm an avid motorcyclist, so I have to also give a little shout out to Chiara Fontanesi, because she is the queen of motocross, and she indeed has won world championships in 2012 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, and 18. And she's also featured onto the Motor Valley website. So as I said, it will be an honor maybe to have her on the program at some point in the future for women with unusual professions.
Oh, what a great idea. What a great idea. What do you ride?
I have a Suzuki Bandit 1200. So it's been my motorcycle for some years. I started small, and now I got a little bit of power on that I definitely enjoy. So my husband just said, "You're never gonna get me on any of those." So the best thing that I can get him is as a passenger on a Vespa when we are in Rome.
Well, the Vespas are very beautiful, and there's the beautiful Vespa collection that people can visit. So not so fast. It can be a nice, a mini machine.
Leisure. Exactly. So, Francine, this has been such a delightful conversation, and we will have to invite you back at some point to talk about something else because, again, you're so knowledgeable about. I always enjoy so much when I hear your presentations because you just bring up things that the average person might not have been exposed to. So you are that bridge that connects those traditions also to the audience here in the U.S. and all the other places where you have presented. So I wanted to thank you very much, and we will be in touch. Hopefully, if you are agreeable to come back on the show, we would love to have you back.
It would be my honor.
Okay, thank you, Francine. And folks, unfortunately, our hour is almost up.
And so just next week, we will have additional guests that we're going to bring to you. We're going to talk about sports in a unique way because we're going to have Claudio Rielsono, who is a club baseball coach from Carnegie Mellon University, who has also a podcast focusing on sports. And then, so we have a little bit about a snapshot of sports, in the Italian-American culture. And transpose on the second half of the episode, we have Anna Piperato, Ph.D. art historian and a resident of Siena in Italy. And for those of you who might be familiar with the Palio of Siena and the contrade, she is a member of the Lupa contrada, and I just want to hear all about it.
All right. Again, folks, it is almost time for us to say arrivederci alla prossima. And again, we want to thank you for listening. And as a reminder, if you want to come on the show, if you have a success story of your journey, your family's journey from Italy to the U.S., or, maybe you just want to sponsor an episode, just reach out to us, the Italian Radio Hour at gmail.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. We love reading your emails, and we appreciate that very much.
And that is indeed the same place where you can catch also episodes that you might have missed or would like to listen to again. So the website is www.istitutomondoitaliano.org, and you can click on the tab The Italian Radio Hour. Vorrei ringraziare la nostra ospite Francine Siegen, our sponsor Istituto Mondo Italiano, Paolucci Plumbing e alla Boara for the music, and Caterina in redazione. But finally, before we leave, here is the trivia for next week. What does it mean, avere la pappa pronta? Once again, what does it mean, avere la pappa pronta? And be the first one to answer correctly and send us an email at theitalianradiohour@gmail.com. Again, theitalianradiohour@gmail.com.
Vi ringraziamo per la risposta from last week's trivia. As always, we enjoy reading your emails. If you are not in the Pittsburgh area or you might be traveling, remember you can catch us streaming live at khbradio.com every Thursday at 5 p.m. And be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook at The Italian Radio Hour. Until next time, alla prossima.
Ciao, ciao.
Ci sta facendo garofula d'orno.
The Italian Radio Hour has been sponsored by Istituto Mondo Italiano.